Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidagena yopakaruttam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuve Patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam kartru sutrasya bhashyasya kramat vivaranasya cha. So we are continuing the discussion on this paradigm of dukkha, as we already discussed earlier. You have to remember this particular chapter deals with the quadrangle of dukkha. It means the recognition of the imperfection of these worldly pursuits and how to get out of this. So, we already discussed elaborately the 20th sutra, Drashta Drishimatraha Shuddhaha Api Pratyanupasyaka. So, the seer, the subject, the witness, the experiencer, the eternal subject, is by its very nature awareness or consciousness, knowledge. It's pure, but it witnesses the modifications of the mind. Now, we already discussed here these different concepts of knowledge, as we mentioned, the Purusha, the subject, the experience, the awareness, it is reflected in the buddhi, in the intellect, and the intellect perceives the external phenomena. So, for example, the old statements in the traditional scriptures, it said, I am Khataka, means this is the pot. Let us say in modern time, this is a computer, this is a chair, this is a table. It is knowledge of the object. So when I see in front of me an elephant, I say, well, this is an elephant, or this is a car. It is knowledge of the object. Now, there is something that is much more important than this self-awareness of this knowledge. You say, if I do not know that I know, then my knowledge is of no practical use. So you can see these two layers in the process of cognition. One, the fact that I happen to know this object in front of me means, well, I understand, well, this is a pot, or this is a car, this is a computer, this is a table, chair, whatever it is. Again, within me, I must have the awareness that I recognize this object as a computer, as a chair. Otherwise, my knowledge of the object is of no real use. Now, I mentioned earlier, of course, there are different views with regard to these two layers of cognition. According to some philosophers of ancient India, these two cognitions take place simultaneously. According to some others, these two cognitions take place separately. So these are, I already mentioned earlier. Now one may ask the question, in what way this is related to yoga or spiritual life? And that's very important. We must know what we know, and we must have a self-awareness of what we know. Otherwise, this knowledge doesn't become wisdom. And this knowledge doesn't really become practically useful in our life. So, in yoga system, there are different views with regard to these two layers of knowledge. Of course, in the Indian philosophical systems, there are different views. But majority of philosophers do recognize the fact that these two cognitions take place simultaneously. But there are a few thinkers, like the schools of Naiyayikas, the school of ancient logicians, who believe that these two take place separately, one after the other. And there are some schools who recognize that our self-awareness becomes a kind of inference. See, when I say that this is a chair, this is chair. The chair is the object of the process of knowledge. But I know this is a chair. Myself, in self-awareness, the knower itself becomes the object of knowledge. So there are some philosophers who would say that knower cannot be the object of knowledge. The one who knows cannot be the object of knowledge. That's why it is called self-awareness. Now, this is very significant for a deeper understanding of Patanjali's system. We must remember, Patanjali's system deals with the subject of freedom. We have to remember this very well. Freedom is an important theme in Patanjali's system. Now, what is actually freedom? We must remember the earlier sutras that we mentioned. Atha Yoga Anushasanam is the first sutra in the Samadhipada. Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodhaha is the second sutra. Tada Drashtu Surubhe Avasthanam is the third one. Vritti Sarupam is the fourth one. They together constitute one important principle in human spiritual evolution and also in psychology. First is, now we are going to begin a discussion on yoga. That's the meaning of atha, means now onwards, from now onwards. When do we start discussion on yoga? When do we really start to think of what actually is my true nature? Who am I? What is my true nature? When do we start this discussion? When we feel that there is no freedom at the level of the body, the mind, or intellect. When we reach a very high level of physical comforts, everything is going on fine. Very good health, very good job, very good house, status, everything. Nothing to worry about. Then there comes a moment when we feel this abundance, this prosperity, this completeness at a physical level itself reveals another fact, its inherent limitation. That's one stage of human evolution. So to understand the limitation of where we stand is the beginning of further growth. So freedom should not be taken in its purely literal sense. Freedom really means a state of mind, a state of spiritual life or evolution, where we feel an inner completeness, where we feel that there is no need to achieve anything higher or further. A kind of inherent inner feeling of completeness, self-fulfillment. This is what is called freedom. So freedom should not be mistaken in its political or in its or secular sense of what freedom is. So freedom is always associated with blissfulness. The quest for freedom starts when we feel the absence of freedom. Absence of freedom is bondage. Bondage is imperfection, incompleteness. Any level, political level, social level, any level. The bondage is incompleteness, a feeling of imperfection. So we start our quest for freedom. So And because freedom alone gives us a feeling of inner fulfillment, inner joy, inner satisfaction. This satisfaction, as I mentioned many times earlier, should not be associated with the ordinary satisfaction. Because our satisfaction, the ordinary sense of the term, means kind of joy that we get when we acquire, when we gain something that we are looking for at the ordinary level. But then when that object is lost, that satisfaction becomes dissatisfaction. Happiness becomes unhappiness. But real freedom, real blissfulness is a state of inner completeness or fulfillment which leaves no room for any quest for further freedom. Now, if you try to get freedom at the physical level, at the secular level, at the empirical, worldly level, we find when we reach a very high level of prosperity or abundance or completeness of the physical, secular, empirical level, suddenly we find we are bound. There is something higher that I must look for. Which means if you ever feel this inner quest within, it means first we have started evolving. Secondly, it is a state of imperfection. Then if you reach a level of freedom at the intellectual level, at the psychological level, mental level, when we have everything that satisfies the mind and intellect, education, knowledge, everything. Here again, if that knowledge, that intellectual freedom, achievement, is not related to, is not linked to some transcendental spiritual blissfulness, again you feel bondage, imperfection. Okay, now, at this level, we start looking for higher spiritual evolution. That is what is called yoga. So yoga, in a way, is a conscious human effort to acquire spiritual freedom. That's why in the yoga system, there is a very elaborate discussion of the evolution of the cosmos. Teleological discussions, elaborate discussions based on evolutionary philosophy. If a yoga system gives a very wonderful description of the universe in which we live, which we are a part, and it also presents a very refined, rational interpretation of evolution. That we are going to discuss in the sutra, which is a very important part of the sutra. So, this freedom is the purpose of human evolution. And in yoga, bondage means identifying with all the empirical things. So we lose our true nature. Our true nature is freedom, blissfulness. But sometimes when we identify ourselves with all empirical things, we forget our true nature. We forget that we are really free, and therefore we feel the bondage. And then through the practice of yoga, we regain this freedom. So freedom doesn't come from outside. Freedom is our inherent, inborn nature. Bondage is something foreign, alien to us. Freedom is our true nature. So now, that we have to keep this in mind when we go to the 21st sutra, Tadartham eva drishyasya atma. That is the 21st sutra in the Sadhana Pada. Now, the sutra literally means all this creation, this prakriti, drishya means prakriti, empirical nature, is all for the sake of witness, the seer, the Purusha. Now, to reclaim our true nature, we must understand the true nature of this empirical world, and then we understand that our true nature is something different. Now, in the Vedanta tradition, you find certain terms used like Atman, Brahman, etc. Those terms are not used in yoga. In yoga, you find a term used is Purusha. So there is a fundamental difference in the yoga approach, which we'll explain later. So we have to remember, in Sankhya and Yoga, you come across, in English translation, you call it Purusha is used. So Purusha here means the essence of our true nature. But in Vedanta, it is called Atman. Now, in Sankhya and Yoga, there are two fundamental categories, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is by its very nature, awareness, self-awareness, consciousness. Prakriti is by its very nature unconscious. The whole creation consists of the different evolutes of Prakriti or the unconscious nature. So the whole evolutionary process is outlined here. First, we must remember, Purusha and Prakriti are two fundamental categories in Yoga and Sankhya. Incidentally, we must remember, Sankhya system is recognized by world philosophers as the most ancient system of human metaphysical contemplation. Because the earliest references to Sankhya system goes back to at least 3000 BC, and many comparative philosophers find the influence of Sankhya system in the works of Heraclitus, and also the 6th, 7th century BC Greek thinker Thales, and many other early Greek thinkers. You find the influence of Sankhya system. Somehow there was an interaction through land route between the northwestern parts of India, from Afghanistan all the way to Greece, Athens. That's how modern historians explain this. So coming to the subject now. What is the concept of this universe, this creation, according to Sankhya and Yoga? First remember, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is, by its very nature, self-awareness, consciousness. Prakriti, by its very nature, is unconscious. The whole creation is nothing but an evolution of, the result of an evolution from Prakriti. The word used is Prakriti. We find many translations, the word nature is used. So nature should be taken in its purely philosophical sense, which means the entire cosmic, the essence, the source of the entire cosmic evolution. The first evolute from this Prakriti is called Mahat. You find M-A-H-A-T is the term used. The first evolute is Mahat. Mahat should be understood as cosmic intellect. The cosmic intellect or the cosmic mind. That is Mahat. Buddhi is the term used sometimes. And remember, Prakriti has got another word. Those who read English translation will find Pradhanam. I need not go into further complications. So remember, Prakriti is the original source of the entire universe, and the whole universe evolves out of Prakriti. Now, the first evolute is Buddhi, the cosmic intellect. It's called Mahat. And then Ahankara. Now, what is Ahankara? It's a principle of individuation. We will understand the nature of Ahankara from different evolutes which come out of this Ahankara. Ahankara is a cosmic individuation, principle of individuation. Now, the yoga philosophers and Sankhya philosophers say this Ahankara, cosmic I consciousness, has got three dimensions, three layers, three categories: Sattvika, Rajasiga, and Tamasika. Now, if you read any books on Indian philosophy, you find Sattva always indicates light, knowledge, serenity, auspiciousness, and so on. Raja is another characteristic, stands for active nature, dynamism, movement. Tamasika means dullness, ignorance, inertia, and so on. Now, these are three types of human nature from a psychological point of view. So you can remember, the entire cosmic evolution is related to these three layers of human mind or human consciousness. All of us belong to some of these categories. In some of us, the sattviga aspect of character dominates. For example, if you are calm and quiet by nature, not due to laziness or ignorance, you are capable of tremendous action, and you are fully aware, you are fully informed, you are very knowledgeable. Still, if you are serene, calm and quiet, you can say it is the domination of the sattviga nature. You can find among men, this is natural to all great spiritual leaders in all traditions, in all religious traditions. Even in so-called non-religious people who are spiritually enlightened, you find this study, contemplation, meditation. Even wisdom, common wisdom, takes you to this level. If you read the works of Confucius and Lao Tzu, you find, for example, the best way to govern is to govern the least. Many such wonderful ideas you find among people who do not really belong to the traditional class of religious prophets. So you can say all these ideas are classic examples of sattvic nature. Awareness, knowledge, capable of activity, still serenity, calmness, and quietude. That is sattvic nature. The Rajasica nature, highly ambitious, very active, very mobile, upward mobility, high ambition, lot of application efficiency. But sometimes it could be, also there is some element of quietude. So you find most enlightened people, educated people, refined people have a lot of Rajasika nature, activity, efficiency, but they are also capable of sitting quiet and thinking. But domination of Rajoguna by presence of Sattva-guna. So Tamoguna, Nidra alasya pramadoktam tat tamasa mudakritam is a definition in Gita. Means sleepishness, a kind of physical laziness, inertia, and then ignorance, confusion. If the person tries to do something, it will be wrong. And he'll be totally confused. And by nature will be very lazy. So this could be an example of tamoguna. These are three levels of human nature. Ask any psychologist will tell you. All of us belong to one of these categories, no doubt. Now, yoga philosophers tell you that not the physical universe alone, human characteristics and the way we work in the world, the way we interact with the external empirical world, with our intelligence, with our senses of perception and senses of action and mind, all these are the results of this cosmic evolution. That's why, according to them, mind is the fourth evolute, fourth category. So mind is also an evolute of Prakriti. You'll be surprised to know yoga philosophers tell you mind is by its very nature inert. Intellect also is inert. It may appear to be a bit of a contradiction. But what they say is mind gets the reflection of consciousness, that is Purusha, what we call Atman in Vedanta. So the mind is able to function as mind. Intellect also gets the reflection of this consciousness, this self-awareness, this Atman in Vedanta or Purusha in yoga. And then intellect is able to understand things. So in a way, we are able to perceive things, we are able to discover the secrets of nature, we are able to philosophize, philosophers are able to speculate, scientists are able to discover things using their intellect and mind, because the Purusha reflects in their intellect in their mind. So this mind and intellect begin to function. Depending upon their inherent characteristics, this function may vary and may be different from person to person. A person who has a lot of good samskaras, good characteristics acquired in this life or previous life, when the Purusha or Atman reflects in their mind, they naturally think of good things, good thoughts, good ideas and all that. And on the other hand, if a person is not so well evolved or refined, then his thought process also will be accordingly different. In other words, the mind and intellect, which are evolutes of this Prakriti, which is by very nature inert, unconscious, get their ability to function as mind and intellect, to think and speculate, only because of the reflection of Atman or Purusha, which is by its very nature awareness and consciousness. And also the 5 senses of perception, 5 senses of action. Pancha Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas, which are called. Means, for example, the organs of sight, hearing, smell, taste and touch, which are the 5 senses of cognition or perception. And also the 5 senses of action like hands, feet, etc. So all these organs of action and perception and mind and intellect, they are all evolutes of this Prakriti. That is the... so you find in the yoga system a very interesting thing. A very wonderful system of evolution is explained right from the grossest to the subtlest. Prakriti is the source of evolution, and the physical empirical world is the grossest dimension. So the first evolute is the cosmic intellect, which is called Mahat or Buddhi. The second evolute, from Prakriti. And then Ahankara, the individuation. Because without your feeling, well, I'm seeing things, I'm tasting things, I'm hearing things, without this individuation, you will not be able to pursue or act or do anything in this world. So from this Ahankara, all other evolutes evolve. And as I said, this Ahankara, individuation, has got 3 levels, 3 dimensions. Sattviga, which is associated with knowledge, serenity, wisdom, and all that. And then active dimension called Rajasika and Tamasika. Tamasika is the lowest, which I said earlier. It is characterized by ignorance, confusion, inertia, sleepishness, and so on. From this Tamasika dimension, 5, the subtle principles of the 5 elements which constitute the world emerge. And from this subtle dimension, the gross dimension of the 5 elements which constitute the world emerge. So you can find, if you go in an ascending order, first you look at the empirical world, what we see, what we interact with. They are constituted by the 5 gross dimensions of what you call Pancha Mahabhutas. And then they originate from Pancha Tanmatras, which are the subtle dimensions of the Pancha Mahabhutas. And they emerge from the Tamasya Ahankara, which again is an evolute of cosmic intellect, which is an evolute of Prakriti. So that means the entire evolutionary process is complete, which means total 24 principles, 23 evolutes of Prakriti, plus Prakriti 24th and Purusha 25. So total 25 principles, which are originally explained in the Sankhya system. That view is accepted in Yoga system, because these are 2 allied systems of philosophy. Now this is the Drishyam. So you can find the 21st Sutra. Tadartham eva drishyasya atma. So the point is, the whole universe is in a way a means, a vehicle, an instrument that helps us in our spiritual progress to recognize, to rediscover our true nature. In a way, so what is the world meant for? The world is meant for one purpose. It helps you to transcend this world. There is a great statement of Swami Vivekananda, not in this context, but in another context. But it's very, very close to this idea. Swami Vivekananda makes a statement. The world is a gymnasium for us to work out our karmas. This is a very famous statement. So he says the whole universe, our life, everything is a gymnasium. Gymnasium means a place you go to for physical exercises. You don't stay there. You go there for a purpose. If without going to gymnasium you can get all the benefits of going to gymnasium, you rather not go there. So it's an instrument. It is a means for one purpose. That is, you want to get health, and you have to ward off the possibility of falling sick. And then he says to work out our karmas, which means the world is a place where you work, you live, you interact with people, you face problems, and you learn from your problems. You suffer, and from your sufferings you become wiser, you learn your lessons, and you evolve. I mean, you get out of this world. I mean, getting out of the world should not be taken in its physical sense. You get a higher level of spiritual awareness. See, those who believe this world is the only thing that is meant, that is of any value. For them, money is the only thing because money helps you to live in this world happily. Food is everything because food will help you to live in this world happily. So, but those who evolve further, they will be living in the world, but they also will have a link to some higher dimension of the reality. For them, the world is no more the supreme goal. Not that you don't run away from the world, but you realize the world as a means, as an instrument for yourself. That's what happened to Buddha. Buddha realized the nature of the world, for Chattvari Ari Satyani, four noble truths. But then what he did, he went, sat under a tree and meditated. There's a great statement in the Sanskrit book, Buddha Vijaya, written by Ashokosha around 2nd century AD. He says, the poet says, Ihasane sushudu me shariram tugasti mamsam che vilayam che yathu aprapi siddhim bhujanma durlabham naivasanat kaya mataschalishyate. This is the statement. I should translate. So Buddha was living in his palace for 28 years. And he had everything going on fine for him. He had not seen a poor man, a hungry man, a sick man, or a dead man. Till that. One day he happened to see all this. And he also saw the face of a person who had renounced all these things, who had become a yogi, who have taken to yoga, a mendicant. A face that is calm and quiet and serene. None of these problems. So he wanted to find out the mystery of human life. And he left his palace, walked a long distance, and came to the Buddhagayas, and sat under a tree and took a vow. I won't get out of this seat till I find out the truth, the supreme truth. Let my body perish. Let everything go away. I won't get up from this seat till I realize the supreme truth. That is a strong, terrible vow he took. And after long years of spiritual practices, he realized this. And then he did not run away. He came back to the world and taught this truth among the followers. So the point is, when at that time, for him, this world was a means. It enabled him to get out of itself. The world is for us to transcend it, not to become part of it. So when we become wiser, we will be living in the world, we will have to make use of this world, we will be working in a factory or we may be doing our job, we may have all other obligations and responsibilities, but we also will have in our mind one idea, well, this world is not, it doesn't constitute the only and the supreme goal of human existence. There is a higher dimension to life and my true nature. And there is one advantage. Once you have it, you will have problems. The problems won't crush you. That's the only difference. So what is the difference between a Buddha and common people? Buddha means the enlightened one. That's a literal translation in Sanskrit. So a spiritually enlightened person also will have problems. The problems will not shake him, will not crush him, because he will have in his mind a higher goal for human life. So he's linked to some higher transcendental spiritual ideal. So it won't crush him anymore. That's the result of yoga. So tadartham eva drishyasya atma. For such a seer and experiencer, this world exists only as an instrument, as a gymnasium, as a means through which he reaches a higher dimension of his own personality. So that's these ideas are explained. In the Sankhya Karika there is a famous verse. Purushasya darshanartham kaivalyartham tatha pradhanasya pangu angavat ubhayorabi samyogas tatkrita sargaka. What is creation? Sarga means what is evolution, what is the universe, what is this? Creation means what is this world? That's idea, not creationism. Remember, it's not creationism, it is what is this world, what is the universe? So Purusha is self-awareness, consciousness, the eternal reality. Prakriti, the empirical nature, is by its very nature unconscious. They come together. The whole process of human evolution, human life is explained. For what? To understand the true nature of Purusha. So this is a very metaphorical description of the whole process of human life and existence. So Purusha is conscious, as I said, but he cannot walk. It is lame. In a metaphorical description. Nature, Prakriti, the source of the cosmic evolution, is by its very nature unconscious, inert, but it is very healthy. So the Purusha can see and understand. Prakriti cannot see and understand, but it is very strong. So Purusha sits on the shoulders of Prakriti and they come out of the forest. So each needs the help of other. It's a very metaphorical description in the Sankhya Karya of Sri Krishna. So the point is, we are by our nature self-awareness and consciousness. So the whole world is nothing but an instrument, a means for us to evolve in spiritual life. Because if we live in the world, then you understand that we are, by our true nature, something higher than an evolute of this inert, unconscious Prakriti. That's a meaning here. This can be explained in another metaphorical way. It is taken the example. It's a very vivid example, maybe much more revealing. It is taken from the Vedanta tradition. It comes in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It's a very famous dialogue, which I mentioned once in one of the Sunday lectures. So there is a dialogue between a king, is a philosopher king, and a great sage. The sage's name is Yajnavalkya. He is a famous, renowned philosopher saint of ancient times. And the king's name is Janaka. He's a philosopher king. He was himself a great renowned thinker, philosopher. Saintly by nature, but is a great emperor. Okay, now, so one day this saint philosopher comes to the court. His name is Janaka, his court. And there is a dialogue. So, Janaka starts with some questions. And Yajnavalkya, the philosopher saint, answers these questions. If you read the literal translation of the text alone, you won't understand the real implications. So Shankaracharya has written a very famous, elaborate commentary. It brings out all the philosophical, metaphysical, spiritual aspects of this dialogue. The simple question is this. Yajnavalkya kim jyotirayam purusha iti. This is the simple question that the king puts the sage. What light is a man possessed of? What is the light? What light helps you in your life? Here, light doesn't mean the physical light. Of course, the early part of the dialogue deals with this physical light. The sunlight, the moonlight, the moonlight, the fire, the candle that you burn, all these light I mentioned. Finally, the dialogue takes you to the highest spiritual light, which is present in all of us. That's how this dialogue progresses. So the first question, if you ask anybody during the day, well, how did you walk here? What light helped you? You don't say it did not require a flashlight. There is sun burning overhead. You would say, well, that's how it begins, the very beginning if you read, and where it ends, the contrast is mind-boggling. It begins with a simple question, apparently meaningless, but it ends with the most philosophical, metaphysically the most celebrated part of the entire Vedantic literature. Of course, that spiritual truth is brought out by Shankaracharya in his commentary. Otherwise, this passage would have practically remained obscure. So first question, Yajnavalkya kim jyotirayam purusha iti. What is the light that a person is possessed of? What light helps you to move about, to do your work, to travel and to come back to your home? I'm just giving a free translation of the verse. So Yajnavalkya replied, well, it is sunlight. Aditya Jyoti means sunlight. Then Yajnavalkya asked the next question. But the sun has set in the west after sunset in the evening. What light helps you? Supposing there is a light. So the sage says it is moonlight. It's called Chandra Jyoti. So Aditya Jyoti is sunlight. Chandra Jyoti is moonlight. But suppose there is no sunlight because it is dark and there is no moonlight. You won't have moonlight all the time. Then what light helps you? Well, you may strike a candle. You may just start fireplace. You kindle the fireplace. So, Agni Jyoti. If there is no sunlight, no moonlight, then you may take the help of fireplace. But suppose you are sitting in a room, night, pitch darkness, no sunlight, no moonlight, no candle. How do you know that somebody is walking outside? How do you know there is a car moving in the street? How do you know that somebody is approaching the room where you are sitting? No sunlight, no moonlight, no fire. That person may make some noise. You may understand there's a car moving in the street from the sound, from the walk. So walk jyoti. It could be speech, it could be sound. So some sound you hear, so you understand there is somebody moving outside a room or there's a car moving in the street. Now, the next question, that is the supreme question. Then the king asked the final question. Suppose there is no sunlight, no Aditya Jyoti, no moonlight, no Chandra Jyoti, no Agni Jyoti, there is no fire, you don't have a candle, you cannot start a fire. And suppose you are deaf. But still you will be thinking, sitting in your room. You may be thinking of what happened yesterday. You may be remembering things. In your mind, maybe you are speculating the highest spiritual truths. Or you may be thinking of what all you experienced the previous day. When there was sunlight, when you were working in the office, when interacting with people. All this you may be speculating on, thinking about. So, how are you able to do this? What is the light? So here light changes its meaning. Till now it is physical light. The light that comes from outside. Sunlight comes from outside. Moonlight comes from outside. The fireplace, the light that you get from fireplace or the candle comes from outside. Of course, when you talk about the light in the form of speech, it also comes from outside, though it is not light in the physical sense of the term. But suppose all these things are totally absent. Still you are thinking, maybe you are meditating. And many people discover great scientific truths at this time, before the computer was discovered at least. Because we had to turn our mind inward and we had to concentrate inward. So the great scientists, when they knocked at the doors of nature, the nature was forced to reveal its secrets in the early days. So, still without this basic human faculty of turning our mind inward, the inner contemplation, we won't be able to discover great secrets of nature, either in science or mathematics, any line, philosophy, anywhere. So what light enables you to think, to relive, to re-experience what you have already experienced in the past? We are sitting in a room, there is no sunlight, no moonlight, no fire, no word, nothing. You can't hear even. Then the answer is Atma Jyoti, the light of Atman, the light of consciousness. Without this light within, sunlight would be of no use. So sunlight borrows its ability to function as light from the Atman. So light here means, what is light? Light means the great revealer, the great supreme truth. Because light has got one unique function. In a way, two functions. Light reveals other objects and light reveals itself. So other objects need the help of light to get revealed, but the light can reveal other objects, and in the process it reveals itself. In other words, it self-reveals, Swayam Prakasha. So, Yajnavalkya says, this light is inherent. It's our true nature. It doesn't come from outside. Rather, all other lights are able to function as light because this Atma Jyoti, Jyotisham Jyoti, that's the term used in the Upanishad, it means the light of all lights, the revealer of all revealers, the essence of all knowledge. It is this Atman which is within us. And the sunlight would be absolutely useless when this light of all lights, this Atman, withdraws itself from the mind and body of an individual. A dead man cannot see anything even if there is sunlight. Because the Atman, the Atma Jyoti, withdraws itself from the physical body and the mind associated with that physical body. It doesn't anymore reflect in the mind of a dead person. So sunlight and moonlight, fire, fireplace or candle, nothing will be of any use to a dead person, because the Atma Jyoti, which is the Jyotisham Jyoti, means the revealer of all reveals, light of all lights, withdraws itself from that person. So, the only light, real light, is this Atman. So, in the Sankhya and Yoga system, you won't find the word Atman used. So that's why, to understand the true implication of Sankhya and Yoga system, we must study Vedanta also. That's why I'm trying to put Vedanta in places, because Yoga and Sankhya systems are extremely wonderful, very helpful to understand how our mind functions. But it stops there. Its greatest contribution to world thought, especially yoga system, is it helps you to understand many of the deeper intricacies of human mind and how it functions. We already described a lot of things about the yoga concept of human mind. So now we will have interaction, and we will continue the discussion in the next day, the next class. So before interaction, there is an announcement. That is, we will not have class next Friday, that is November 27th, because of the Thanksgiving holiday the previous day. So please remember, the next Friday class on Patanjali Yoga Sutras will be held on Friday, December the 4th at 7:30 p.m. here itself. So please remember, we will have no class next Friday, November 27th, because of Thanksgiving holiday, the previous day. So the next class will be on Friday, December the 4th at 7:30 p.m. Now we will have interactions. So, yeah, discuss. In the Upanishads?
Well, you mentioned this light within.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
Yes.
light of all light.
Yes, yeah.
Talk about any specific techniques?
Yes. During the Upanishadic time, spiritual practices were mostly in the form of training for meditation, making use of even empirical world as metaphors and imageries. There were no temples, and there was no regular, what we understand today, puja and worship during the early Vedic period and the period of the Upanishads. So most of the spiritual practices took the form of meditative practices. So the one very important popular way of training was the disciples were trained to meditate on the Atman, which is immanent in them, in the form of an effulgent light. Because when they meditate on their own inner self as a conscious, self-aware Atman or consciousness, their ability to understand the true nature, the ability to understand will increase, and that awareness will increase. So that is a meditation. Of course, there were some mantras and methods employed along with this. The mantras we don't discuss in this class, but the disciples were asked to look upon the whole world, the sun, the moon, the valleys, mountains, rivers, oceans, and all that, as coming from this supreme reality, which is immanent, the inner resident in their own heart. So if you Hridaya Guhayam, you find, means the inner chamber of their own heart. That's the meaning here.
Do they actually visualize a flame at the heart?
That kind of meditative practices were practiced in some tantric systems and all that. Of course, in some meditative techniques, they were trained to look upon this consciousness in the form of an inner effulgence light. So there is one famous suktam, it is in Rigveda called Purusha Suktam. Purusha Sukta is called, and also Narayana Suktam. So in that it is mentioned that you should meditate as the Lord on your own inner chamber of the heart, at the seat of the Lord, who is residing there in the form of an effulgent light.
So when I see myself as a witness, I mean the witness is in a sense that revealing light.
Yeah.
Which is nothing material.
Yeah. In fact, when you look upon the source of all knowledge within yourself, as residing within yourself, and not as something that comes from outside, then our awareness, even if you practice even as a test, you find that your ability to understand things, to recognize things will increase. Intense concentration, inward concentration on this reality as the supreme revealer, as the supreme essence of all knowledge, will increase your mental faculty to understand things. On the other, you can practice for test you for laboratory. Suppose you try to meditate on yourself as total darkness, total ignorance. Suppose we try to think of ourselves as the most dullest, most ignorant, most worthless person. Try to meditate for a few days. Don't do that, of course. You find your ability to concentrate, your ability to understand things will get reduced. So that is, otherwise you can just imagine how was Patanjali able to understand all this, or the commentators who wrote. Even the analysis of human mind into these five fundamental categories, say Kshipta, Vikshipta, Kshipta, Muda, Vikshipta, Ekagra and Niruddha. Just imagine, and this all happened at least 3,000 years back. So many of these descriptions are really, they came as a great surprise to modern psychologists who read these books. Descriptions, for example, the explanation of phobias and delusions as rooted in misconceptions that you have carried in your mental chamber for years is manifested when you interact with external things, which any psychiatrist will admit. How was Patanjali able to, the commentators able to find out all these 3,000 years back, 2,000 years back, maybe 1,000 years back, the commentators especially. So, after all, you heard in Vivekananda's lectures, it's an interesting thing. Newton was, well, the story may be just a fable, a tale. Newton was sitting under the apple tree, and an apple fell on his head, and then Newton discovered the principle of gravitation. There are many people, even if big stone falls on their head, they may go to Kaiserpem and nothing will happen to them. So you find Newton just, that made him think. And so we may ask the question, what is the source of Newton's discovery of the principle of gravitation? His own inner self. What revealed to him? So, after all, the fundamental principle that knowledge comes from within, not from outside. That is again reinforced by, if you read the Patanjali system. So, once we meditate on ourselves as essentially the free, the effulgent, the conscious, the self-aware reality, then our mental faculty, even psychological faculty to analyze things will improve. The opposite may be a better test. If a person strongly believes that he is dull, he is ignorant, and he meditates himself as dullness, ignorance, non-awareness, slowly his faculty to understand things will come down. So, what was the instrument for these ancient sages to discover this? It was this process. This dialogue is very, very interesting, you know. See, this question is very simple. It begins a simple question. How did you come here? Daytime. You can say sunlight. That's how the question and answer begin. And finally, it ends with the highest discussion of the inner consciousness, the Atma Jyoti. So from the grossest aspect of sunlight, it is revealership, so to call it, in the form of sunlight, to the subtlest and most profound aspect of the inner self-awareness, in the form of the light of all lights. The science calls Jyotisham Jyoti. That's how it progresses. Of course, in the yoga system, it is very close to modern science, you know. See, you just, in an ascending order, you begin your inquiry with the question, what is this table made of? What are the chairs? What is this bay? What is the mountain? What's the nature of the mountain? All the physical universe made of Pancha Mahabhutas, 5 elements. And then there's subtle dimension. And then all the way it goes up to the final source of the whole process of evolution, the cosmic evolution. So if there are more questions, we'll be happy. You know, often when we take the class, we won't be able to explain everything. We may miss many things. But when you ask questions, it gives me a chance to explain more. That's all.
So just to expand on that a bit.
Which one?
What you were just mentioning, but we are asking different things. Prakriti or Brahman is the ultimate reality. Right? Like this world is the grossest form of that.
Yeah.
How do you explain like the subtlest form of it?
Yeah.
And then how do we get from the subtlest to the
Yes, I will explain. Now, please remember, the word Brahman is not used in the Sankhya Yoga systems. It is used in Vedanta. But in the Sankhya and Yoga systems, there are 2 fundamental categories. It is not a non-dualistic system, it is a dualistic system. Means 2 fundamental categories. One is Purusha, the other is Prakriti. The whole cosmos, the entire universe is the result of evolution, constituted by the evolutes from Prakriti, which is by its very nature inert, unconscious. Now there is a gradual process of evolution. So I am coming in a descending order. So first Prakriti, the source of all evolution. From that, the first evolute is Mahat. You find in some books Mahat Tattvam, means the cosmic intellect, Buddhi. From that Buddhi or cosmic intellect, Ahankara. So what is Ahankara? Ahankara is the principle of individuation. Without this, you won't be able to function, you won't be able to think, you won't be able to act or speak. So this Ahankara has got 3 dimensions. Remember, it is an analysis of this pluralistic, diverse world. World is so different entirely. It is so diverse. Human nature is also diverse and different. So this explains. 3 categories, 3 layers. Sattvika, Rajasiga and Tamasiga dimensions of Ahankara. So from Sattvika dimension, our mind evolves. And also our senses of action and senses of perception. From tamasika ahankara evolves the subtle dimension of this cosmos. So in Sanskrit, Prithvi, Apa, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha means the earth principle, then the water principle, the fire principle, then the air principle, and then the space. So they make a distinction between the subtle dimension, which you can't see, and the gross dimension, which you see in front of you with your eyes. So the physical universe that you see normally and interact with is constituted by the 5 Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 fundamental gross elements. But they are the evolutes of 5 fundamental subtle elements. Maybe the Sankhya and Yoga philosophers were trying to make a distinction between the subtle dimension which constitutes the empirical universe and the gross dimension. I don't know how to scientifically explain this. Is there a difference between the subtle dimension, the fire dimension principle, and the fire itself? Is there a difference between the air principle and air itself? Air itself is gross, Pancha Mahabhutas. But the air principle is the subtle, Tanmatras. It's called Pancha Tanmatras, 5 Tanmatras, the subtle dimension. Maybe what's meant by what makes the fire fire, what makes the water water, what makes the air air, what makes the space space, the quality that makes it what it is different from the thing itself, not in a Kantian sense in a thing in itself, but in a very ordinary sense. So the fire that you see in front of you, that you use for cooking, is the gross dimension, Pancha Mahabhutas, but there is a quality associated with it, which enables it to function as fire, is the subtle dimension. That's all we can say. So they constitute the 23 evolutes plus Prakriti 24, Purusha is 25th. So this is the description of the universe according to Sankhya Yoga system. Now where does lie the spiritual significance? The whole explanation of this creation through evolution is given to make you understand that you are in your true nature different from this. All these things are evolutes of Prakriti, which is by its very nature inert and unconscious. You are in your true nature is awareness itself, consciousness itself, Purusha. That's the process. So, we will continue the class as I said. Next class is on Friday, December the 4th. Thank you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.